My talk is called NoOps in the cloud. In this case, NoOps means that you set up your DevOps team so well that during your normal sprints, you don't need to spend any time on operational work. Everything just works, meaning that the developers can do what they want to do, namely develop features. So this is going to be a talk with an example. So I'm going to start with an example, like a Java application. Who here has ever built and run a Maven Java application? Yeah, most of you, good. So for this example, I'm going to take a Maven Java application and I'm going to be deploying it to production. The Maven Java application is going to talk to an SQL database. I'm assuming most of you have also done that before. Yep. Okay, so you might have heard during the conference and before there's this new thing called Docker. So we'll also be using that. For example, if you haven't heard of Docker, think of it as a really lightweight VM that allows you to insert your operating system, all your patches, and your application all in one. So the operation side just has to run it. And if you ever need a new version for like Java on your server, you can just insert it into Docker image yourself, which means you don't have to ask ops guys to do it for you. Those Docker things need to run somewhere. The tool we're going to use to run them is called Kubernetes. It's going to be a production setup, so that means we'll need multiple instances. And if we're going to have multiple instances, we need a load balancer to talk to all of them. And in the end, we're going to use Jenkins to string everything together. So this is the production infrastructure we're going to be setting up. There's going to be a load balancer. You have 3 instances of your API running, so even if one crashes, you still have 2 left. Database is replicated twofold, so even if one crashes, you still have 1 left. And yeah, databases tend to crash a lot less than applications you write yourself, so 2 is enough. So now we're going to switch to the demo. First of all, we're going to have a Java application. It's a normal Java application, so that also means I can run it from my IDE. So if I have it on localhost 8080. Our application in this case is a guestbook application. And it works just fine locally, but this is you as a developer writing your code. So most of you here know how that works. So now we're going to want to deploy it. So in order to deploy it, we're going to do a Maven build. So this is a Maven clean package. Also should be fairly standard for everyone here. This builds me a YAR. One thing that's slightly different from at least what I used to do a couple years ago, is that a couple years ago I was building a WAR and I needed to take that to a Tomcat server with my ops guys and ask them to deploy it and everything. Right now I'm doing it slightly different because the jar I made includes Jetty. So in order to run the application, all I need is a Java JRE, no Tomcat, no anything else. All I need is a Java JRE and I can run the application I just built. So I give it the jar that's in my target directory that I just built, tell it to act as a server, and I give it a config file. I need to make sure that this one is stopped because otherwise we'll get a port conflict. And now it's up and running again over here. So all we need to do to run this is a Java GRE, and that's key to making this whole setup work because that means it's really easy to deploy your app everywhere. No need to worry about a Tomcat version or anything, because as developer you all put it in your jar file. So the next step is to put that in Docker. So Docker is basically a lightweight VM that you can hand over to another system and tell them run this for me. So no more asking ops guys to update versions or anything. Let's see if I can zoom this in. No, I can't. Much better. So Docker works with a so-called Docker file. What it does, it starts with an image that has a JRE in it. It says I'm the maintainer. We work from root. What it does is it copies the artifact that Maven just built. It copies it into the Docker file so it can run it. It adds the configuration file, and it tells it how to run it and the port that it needs. So this is all you need. You need to write as a developer, and now you can build a Docker file. So also, let's, for example, say that you now you have a product owner and he wants a new feature. He likes the guestbook rebuilt, but right now the bar above here is blue. This is a local development environment, and he would like to have it purple. The application is also already running in production right now. That's over here. So we take our local development environment. We take our code. And over here, we change the color of our toolbar. This isn't very interesting, but now I should be able to, if I run it locally from my IDE again, I should be able to see that at least locally, now my bar is purple, but now it works on my machine, and it might make me as a developer happy, but my product owner wants to have it in production as soon as possible. So over here it's still blue. So what we do right now is we check it into Git. And we push it to master. And we have a Jenkins instance over here that's listening to master. So if we wait a little bit, it should pick it up by itself and start building. Yeah, there we go. So the way it's set up is that in my source code repository, I also checked in a Jenkins file that tells me how to build it. So it has a couple steps. The first one is check it out from Git. Then it creates some variable names that it will need later. Then the steps are Maven clean package. That's what you also saw me do locally. The next one is to take the Docker file we just had and create the actual Docker image from it. That image needs to gets pushed to my Kubernetes cluster so it can start deploying it later. And then I tell my cluster to actually deploy the image we just built. And now if we take a look at the Jenkins over here, yep, it's all done. So now in production, my title bar is also purple. I did this with zero downtime during the day at about 1:45 instead of 3 a.m. on a Saturday night. And this is also zero downtime. So if I go back to my slides, what it just did, it took the first one that had the blue title bar, it brought it down, it replaced it with the new one that had a purple title bar, and then it replaced the second and the third ones. So that at any time there were at least 2 instances left to serve my production traffic. Actually, that might have been one of the most boring demos you've seen during DevOps here, and actually that was the whole point, because if you set it up right, all it takes is a push to master, and you've deployed with zero downtime during the day. And then you can get back to developing, which is what most of us like to do. So that's really nice. But who will maintain all this code? Because writing code for a demo that works on a conference is not all that hard, but keeping it up and running for, let's say, years in production without it falling over, that's something else. So there are several components. Who will maintain what? Well, the Java application. Well, if you're a developer, sorry, but you still need to maintain your own application. No magic to fix that. There's the SQL database. I'm using a cloud provider, so I can ask them to give me an SQL database that's replicated, and I also give it a maintenance window, so they make sure it gets patched and it keeps running. And they also make the backups, so I always get my 2 images. So as long as I don't break the contents of the database myself, it will just keep on running. And that's what we pay our cloud providers for. Docker. Well, all you need to do is have the Docker file and it will just build, so that's just fine. The Kubernetes cluster, actually building those things and deploying them can be a bit of a hassle. Again, that's why we have a cloud provider, in this case Google Cloud, and you can just ask those guys, give me a Kubernetes cluster with 3 nodes, and 3 minutes later you'll have a cluster. And again, they keep it up and running without you having to worry about it. And there's a load balancer in front of that. Again, we use a cloud provider, so we just tell them we want a load balancer to point at our application, and it will keep running. And the only thing is our Jenkins box won't update itself, but the Jenkins box also won't be exposed to the internet directly, because the last time I had my Jenkins exposed to the internet directly, I got an email from my cloud provider at 2 a.m. in the morning that it was used by a Chinese spammer. So the Jenkins will be behind an SSH tunnel, so it won't be reachable from the internet. So if it's not up to date with the latest patches, that's not that big of a deal. So now we have a really easy deploy to production. Any questions? Nope. Oh, no.
Database migrations.
Yeah. Good question. We use version databases for that. There's 2 tools in the Java world that I know of that are really good at that. One is Flyway, the other one's called Liquibase. Basically what you do is you create SQL files with create tables, alter tables, and other schema migration, and you number them, and you ship those with your application, and when it starts, it checks which versions are applied on the database and which ones it has. So when starting the application, it sees like migrations 1 to 12 are applied to the database. And in the code that you just shipped, there's 2 new migrations, namely 13 and 14. The tool is smart enough to be like, okay, you already got 1 to 12. I'll just apply 13 and 14 for you as soon as I deploy the application. And then I can continue starting the application. So that way, all your database migrations they're all checked into Git, and they're also all replayable. For local testing, if you can just throw away your database, restart the application, and the application will rebuild all your tables from scratch. And that way, the database migrations are also automated. Okay, now we're getting a bit more technical. But Kubernetes over here, it has the 3 applications. But if I take a look under the hood, so what it does over here, these are all the versions of the application I deployed recently. And you see that one of them has 3 desired and 3 current, and also 3 up and running. But the other ones are actually the old versions of my application. So if I want to roll back, I can easily tell it like scale down the one that's running now and scale the one back up that is the one that I want. Any other questions?
What if database migration script fails?
Well, if you, good question. One of the main reasons for that is that you use the database migration script also implies that no one touches the database in any other way than making a database migration script. So first of all, you have an accept database, and because no one has ever touched the database schema in there, because you made a deal with your team that no one touches that, you know that it's exactly the same on accept as production, because the only way for that code to get changed is through migration that you checked in. So you can be pretty sure that your migrations on accept will perform exactly the same as production.
Not really, actually, because if you drop an index which is being used while on running query, and this query is being run at the moment, then in Oracle you will get an exception.
Yeah. Actually, good question. No, then you'll need.
It doesn't guarantee that if it's run on locally, it doesn't guarantee that
Yeah.
it's run on production.
No, I haven't encountered that one before, but yeah, in that case, you'll need to find some way to have a safe window to deploy. So in that case, you probably can deploy at 2 in the afternoon for those queries. Again, if you're doing major database refactors that basically aren't instant, but take a couple of hours because you have a huge database and you need to redo an index or something, then you might actually want to do it at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, just because your service will probably be impacted, or maybe even have downtime. All these automation tools are no excuse to stop using your brain. So in this case, if you're doing scary things to your database, you probably know it, and then you need to take it into account.
Just dropping and creating indexes is not something you expect to be broken, usually.
No, yeah,
It just might happen.
it's a bit of a leaky abstraction in this case. So again, use your brain. Yeah, I think we're done. Thank you.